Phedra is a Tyler-based photography who goes by 808 Pics on Instagram. But like with so many people I meet, she is much more than I could have ever expected. From growing up with discrimination for being biracial, to becoming a competitive speaker, a radio DJ, selling vacuums, raising money for charity, working in TV, broadcast, and much more, we discuss the struggles, feats of strength, the overcoming of hurdles, and the victories that came along her journey. Even her photography has its own healing philosophy that came behind it. Phedra embodies the idea of an unordinary person, and I think you will agree as we go to a coffee shop in Jacksonville to meet Phedra. All right, so today I'm interviewing Phedra. She's a Tyler-based photographer, and I'll let her introduce herself a little more.
Hi.
And then we'll go from there.
My name is Phedra. I'm a Tyler-based photographer.
And that's the podcast.
Thank you guys for coming out.
So, how would you describe your style of photography?
Jeez Louise. I love photography. I really do. And I know people get super, deep in the sauce when it comes to, what camera model they use. And honestly, I don't even think about it. I don't. I would say I lean towards mostly portraits. Is that a valid answer?
Yeah, I think so.
I really like portraiture, just more of the unposed stuff. I haven't gotten into the real studio style stuff, and I'm just learning and exploring. I'm a baby to the game.
Yeah. So is it more street photography, or is it just getting together with people and taking photos? When you say unposed,
I would just say I'm an opportunist. I'm not gonna hate. When I first started, I've been in journalism for 20 years.
Okay.
I started out my career in TV and radio, so I was always around photography and videography, but I was leaning more towards being a broadcaster. I used to be a urban radio DJ. I worked for KLTV when I started out with my career, but I was behind the camera. And then when I started working for city governments, I realized doing their social media for cities and metropolitan areas, it would be really beneficial for me to also know how to work a camera, to be able to do the event photography and videography and interviews. And I just kind of started spontaneously growing out of that, doing more of that, probably about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, of actually being wait, let me actually really focus on taking pictures of people. Mm-hmm. Because I noticed when I was doing the events, people really resonated with the shots I was taking of people interacting, their joyful expressions at the event or the excitement, at a musical performance. And I saw the progress it was making through social media, how many more people were liking it, sharing it, connecting with us, building, a closer association with our brand. And I realized I just liked taking those photos so much. So I'm let me see if people will pay me money for this.
Yeah.
And that is a story of my opportunity-based photography.
So, you mentioned, you got your start in journalism.
Yes.
And stuff like that, and TV and radio. So, I'd like to go back a little bit before that, and when did you decide that was going to be your original career path?
When did I decide I was interested in TV and radio?
Yeah, or journalism, anything like that. What led to that?
So my decision probably started in 5th grade, and it actually didn't start with journalism or radio. I did UIL, which is in Texas, the University Interscholastic League. So it's for the nerd kids, mm-hmm. and it's the math elites and the stuff the debater kids. And I was super, super interested in poetry interpretation and impromptu speaking. And so I started doing that in 5th grade with the very first poem my mom found for me called Excelsior by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And so basically you would get up in front of judges and compete with other kids reading poetry. Mm-hmm. Or if you did impromptu speaking, you would get up in front of a judge, pull a topic out of a hat. You had 5 minutes to think about it, and then you'd have to deliver a speech. And I did that on a ended up going with like local, regional, state, and then national level of performing and competing in high school, middle school, elementary, middle school, high school, and college. And I loved speaking and performing so much that I had done a spoken word slam poetry, and I was the poet of distinction for the city of Dallas. And then I was going to school at TJC, and someone had seen me perform, and they were like, hey, there's like a radio station hiring, looking for a morning show girl. Like, you talk really well.
Yeah.
Maybe you should like go by there and check it out. So I did. And it was the oldest black-owned radio station in Texas, which was located in Tyler. It was called KZEY AM. It was a really historical place owned by a really scary former pimp. And so I went into this like dark leather office with like all the leather furniture and like the candles burning, and this guy in a really bright suit, and he was like, oh, what are you? I was like, I'm here for the morning show girl thing. And he just like kind of like tossed a newspaper at me and was like, read this. And I was like, okay. And I like read it to the best of my ability. He's like, you're hired.
Yeah.
And then I started working radio.
So is that radio station closed down now?
KZEY, unfortunately, is the gentleman.
Air quotes, gentlemen.
Of questionable repute. Yeah. It was really sad to see it go because it was such a icon in radio history. But yeah, it's no more.
Yeah.
And that gentleman passed away.
Is no more.
He is no more.
Yeah. So from there, you said you got into television, more behind the camera type work.
Yeah. So yeah, I worked. I was at TJC, and this was like, I'm showing my age here, man. But this is back before they had like applications on computers.
Yeah.
You would go to the TJC. There was like a little jobs office, like a little tiny office, and there was like, go check out the book. And it was like a 3-ring binder with like the clear pages and like job postings like stuck in the clear binders, and you would flip through and look and see if you could find a job.
Yeah.
So I was like flipping through the binder, and I saw that KLTV was hiring for their morning show camera operators. And I was like, okay, I'm already working in radio. I really would like to learn more about TV because I would like to actually be a broadcaster, like And so I went in, and they were like, okay, can you push this camera? It was like one of the huge old school ones on the dolly thing. Yeah. And they're like, okay, if you physically as a young lady can push this camera, because they only had young men, you can push this camera across and back in under like some odd seconds. Then they're like, yeah, we'll give you a shot. And I was like, it was like feats of strength, you know? So like all of my started with like the most ridiculous Herculean tasks, like read this paper and then like push this, uphill.
You're in a Greek.
I was like, and my name is Phedra, which is a very tragic Greek name. So so these Herculean feats of, journalism. Yeah. And so I was able to push it back and forth, and they were like, all right, gal, we'll give you a shot, and see what you can do. And I pushed that camera for like the next 5 years.
So did you come out of mass communications at TJC?
Here's the thing. I just came out of TJC, period. Because what happened is I was going for journalism because I liked speaking and, reading and stuff like that. And it just seemed like a natural progression. But working as an actual morning show hostess and actually working every day at a news station, I quickly realized none of my professors had actually been doing what I was doing. They had never had a radio show. Mm-hmm. They had never actually been in a TV station behind the scenes, like producing a newscast. Yeah. And, I'm asking them questions because we're reading about radio theory and they're telling us, and I'm like, I do a morning show every morning, and we don't do these. We don't. Like the technology you're talking about, the processes you're talking about. I'm like, when were you in radio? And they're like, well,
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm just getting to the point where I'm just sounding like a total asshole here. Let me like chunk the deuce, because first of all, I knew how much the people I was working with were making, and I knew how much the school was asking me to spend on my education, and I knew the teacher's background, and I was like, this don't add up. This don't make sense. So
Yeah. Yeah, no,
and nothing against higher education.
no, I was gonna say, because I came out of mass communications at TJC, and
God bless them.
yeah, no, I mean now they have people who actually worked in PR, who worked for KLTV
Nice.
and stuff like
And
that.
probably people my old ass used to work with.
So, do you know Derek Gray?
Probably. I might be older than Derek Gray, honestly. I'm pushing like 500 years old.
Well, there's how old you are, and then how old the 30-something-year-old guy acts. You know?
Yeah, no, I'm older than Mr. Gray then. Yeah, I'm like when Skirto was young and vibrant. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like Horace McQueen was like on TV when I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Horace McQueen. If any of you kids remember, really, really young, waking up and the cattle stocks are up by, that's my era.
Okay. I won't make you age yourself.
No, I'm
anymore in
fine.
this
I loved
interview.
I loved it. I'm in the best season of my life, honestly.
Yeah. So, you go working as a camera operator.
Yes.
So did you work your way into any other positions?
You had to, you know, like it's so weird now. I had gone back to KLTV a couple years ago because they had done like the midday show, and they had like a young lady like doing like talking. I think it was like some sort of little midday thing. And I was like, oh, that'd be interesting. I kind of would like to jump back into broadcasting. And then I quickly realized they had eliminated all of the like camera operators, all the soundboard
They
people.
moved over to the automated.
Everything. And I was blown away because it used to take a team of like almost 15 people to produce our morning show. So, you know, you had to learn how to do the camera. You had to know how to operate the soundboard. You had to know how to produce, you know, work master control. And here's the thing. Again, it's so funny. I started when they didn't have a website.
Yeah.
When TV news was like, why would we put our news online? Like literally, like they were like, why would we do that? Because they thought it would take away from people actually watching to have it online. So I was actually part of the team and led the team that created KLTV.com.
Really?
Yes. And then like came up with this crazy cuckoo bananas idea that's like, what if this like space, what if we put advertisements there? And they were like, "What?" Yeah, it was
Now
a wild.
you have to click ad every 10 seconds. Skip ad.
It was
every
wild.
10
It was
seconds.
wild times. Like I was just, you know, crumbing up with crazy ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think KLTV's the only one that's fully automated in the area. The other news stations aren't. They still have operators and everything. It was funny. I was talking to my professor, and he's like, "Yeah, because of the automation and stuff, like just because you've got actual news anchors, everything isn't timed out perfectly." And he's like, "So they're okay with the automation with mistakes that they would have fired actual people for."
Yeah. It was really. I think back, and I'm like, that was actually really stressful. And I mean, I have stories of like the crazy, like things catching on fire. You know,
I mean, if you want to go into the catching on fire story,
but like we were doing you know, KLTV used to have like the little weather desk, and there's like the lights. Well, you had to be really careful because you had gels that would go over the lights and stuff like that. And we had someone who wasn't 100% on understanding, and like a gel just burst into flames, and it's like flames and like sparks coming down, and the weathercaster's just like talking, and we're like 3, 2, 1 wrap, and he's like, you know. And we had a girl quit on air. She like was the what is it where you the little scrolling thingy?
Teleprompter.
The teleprompter. She was a teleprompter operator, and she had been planning this out. She like left notes all over KLTV, and then like jumped in front of the weathercaster and was like, "I like right on air. It was, there's some stuff that, like you said, you couldn't do anymore.
Yeah.
It was a Wild West.
Yeah. No, I bet it was fun though. Probably stressful.
It was. Like, I look back and I'm like, wow, it was incredible. Because those cameras were maybe like 400 or 500 pounds when you had the podium, the pedestal, and you had the camera on it. And like, you were trying to get shots in under like 8 seconds, like moving it from one, focusing it, zooming it, getting everything zoomed in and focused, and like hitting that next shot. And it was like boom, 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 boom. And you couldn't mess up.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah. So out of working in news, you decided to go work. Would it be PR that we say you went to, or? Well,
after I had worked in news for some time, I actually had an opportunity to go full time with the Blaze radio station.
Okay.
So most of my career, I've been a woman breaking into male-dominated spaces, because this is over 20 years ago. Like, where things seem like really common. Where things seem really common now for young ladies to be there, 20 plus years ago, they really weren't. So working as a morning show hostess on an AM station, I was the only girl who was on air. Working at KLTV in the morning show, I was one of the only girls who started out camera operating. And then when I started working at the Blaze, I was the only female they had on air. And I did radio, like ran a show. So like the Crunk, like Little John, and like all that. And like Juvenile, Juvie, and Lil Wayne, when Lil Wayne was like Lil Wayne.
Yeah.
That's when I was like throwing Moet, and like on stage. Yeah. But then I had a family. I started having a family, and I was like, you can't be putting Moet on bitches and trying to like breastfeed.
Yeah.
It's not a compatible lifestyle. So
you try it for the first month or so, and it feels
it wasn't, actually getting into like verbal altercations with P. Diddy. Like, he did like a show, like one of the first reality shows where he had like all the rappers competing. I had an opportunity to meet him and all the rappers, and like he and I went back and forth. It was a lot. And so I left that and actually got into nonprofit governance.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a weird transition. So it was like DMX.
From arguing with DMX.
Yeah, so it was like I went into nonprofit much like DMX, like, give us money. It's a good cause. And everybody's like, oh God. And it was slightly effective. People would give you money, but
yeah.
It's not
they're
really
also taking a little back.
Yeah, yes.
So you mentioned P. Diddy.
Yeah.
He's
always been.
What kind of vibes did you get off of him?
So it was really a weird story. There was a guy. There's not really any. There's no maybe there's one or two. I think a new vinyl shop, but he was actually the owner of like a real music studio record store in Tyler. It was in North Tyler, and he was just a really well connected guy. And they were doing a meet and greet for P. Diddy's new reality TV show. And all the aspiring rappers who were in it were going to be there and like have the food and everything like that. So it was an opportunity to actually like talk to him. Like, it was like a panel thing.
Yeah.
And reality TV was like sort of a new thing at the time. And so I'd asked P. Diddy a couple really pointed questions about like what happens to these people after the show is like over.
Yeah.
He didn't like that, because there really wasn't anything waiting for them after the show was over, and he didn't want them to know that. So
yeah,
he was like, get her out of here. And I was like, you can't silence me. But he did. He did silence me.
Well, you can get on the what do you call them? Where they've got the court case against him, you can add yourself onto him.
He's silent. Yeah.
Out of all the horrible allegations,
yeah,
he didn't let me speak out of confidence.
He's always been first and foremost about himself. So,
yeah.
And I don't know what happened to any of those poor rappers. After that, I never heard of any of them after that. So.
Yeah. So, okay, so you started raising money and stuff. So where did it go from there?
After I did nonprofit, I was with a nonprofit that I absolutely thought would be my forever family. Like, I really was like, I'm going to retire from here. I was so passionate about the mission, so passionate about like moving the image of the organization forward. And you can be a victim of your own enthusiasm and success. Like, you really can. Like, if you really are going into something that's like old and established and like has its methodology, and you come in just like doing just new things, you can move faster than an organization, and also you can shine more brightly. And there's people that sometimes don't like that. So I don't want to get all into it. It's like a sad story. But after I got burned out by nonprofit, it's really easy. I'll just say the name of the last one. I did work for the American Cancer Society.
Okay.
So I was like an actual on the road fundraiser. I had 19, like multiple counties. I was driving all over, doing 12 and 15 hour days. The average lifespan of a young lady, because it was mostly young ladies, they would last maybe about a year or so. I managed to like hang in there for 2 years before I just became completely exhausted. Yeah. And then I was like, let's try city government. I've done some other weird things. Like, I've sold vacuum cleaners door to door.
Yeah.
You know, I've sold timeshares.
Kirby or...
yes, yeah. Kirby. I'm a Kirby. I believe in Kirby.
See, that's the thing that makes me actually, like, believe they're good vacuums. Is like, everybody I've ever met is like, oh, yeah, I sold Kirby. I still have Kirby. Like,
yeah, as soon as I could get my hands on one, I did, because they really are awesome. I remember, because Kirby was a trip. So, like, you're just, like, walking in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Knocking on people's doors.
You don't know what's behind that door.
Disappearing into their houses. So, yeah, you would see, like, I remember growing up, my dad was always, you know, I grew up in my great-great-grandparents' little cabin. And when I talk about, like, shack, it was, like, tin roof up on bricks. It was, and, you know, he was always like, you know, be proud of who you are. It's not what the outside looks like. You know, there's people living in these big mansions, and you don't know what's going on in that. Yeah. And I was all, and you're a kid, you're like, okay, you know, whatever smoke you have to blow up my ass to make me okay with, you know, this situation. Yeah. Okay. But then, you know, you go work for Kirby, and you go into these mansions and you see some things. You're like, oh, you don't know. You don't know what's going on in these houses. You know, I went into a house that, like, literally every visible surface, including the beds, was covered in dog feces.
Really?
Yeah. Every visible surface. And these people were like, and it's like, you ended up becoming like a therapist to some of these people. Because they're like, we would never. I'm like, well, you let me in. And I can see you need 2 Kirby's.
And I sold them so many Kirby's.
But you know, you would become a therapist, and you really saw, it gave me empathy for people. Because, you know, we can all present a really nice, you know, I took a shower before I came and put on my deodorant. I created my nicest bag. But you don't know. Yeah. You don't know what's going on inside of people. And then when you go into their houses, you're like, oh, it really gives you empathy. Yeah. For everybody you meet. No,
that is something interesting. I watch Windows. So we do a lot of businesses, but we do residential. And me and my brother will talk about this because we work together. The saddest ones are where they have family photos, but they're all from the 90s. And you know, you're like, okay, these kids are only like, you know, this old, you know, there should be more here. And a lot of times those people will find problems with the windows and call us back. And it's just because they want somebody to talk to, you know. You see a lot, you know, going into people's personal private space. And photography is kind of like that, you know. The thing that I always am taken aback by is how much people aren't in their own body. So, you know, you have some people who are super comfortable taking selfies. You know, you got this young ladies and you know, they're like Instagram models. But when you actually work with real people, it's like you see how much they're disassociated from their physical body, and you're like, I need you to come back down into your physical body. And it's like I can see through the camera just the people's level of discomfort with themselves. And it's just like,
talking to people and understanding, it's like, at what point did you like come out, like, are you out of your body, and how can I get you in? It's like, I work with a lot of male clients, and I'm like, I need to see your like rooted masculinity, you know? And they're like, what? And I'm like, I need you to feel your growing energy, man. Like, I need you to come down off in it. And they're like, at first I don't understand, and then it's like I work with them, and then they're like, oh, okay. They start to, and it's an intimate kind of connection that you build with people, like really getting them aware of like where their arms are, what their facial expressions are, how their posture is, like how they're presenting themselves and how it looks on camera.
So what do you think? What do you think it is that makes people, I guess, disassociate
from their own body?
Yeah.
Trauma and shame. I was a kid who was extremely bullied. So I was raised in Bullard, Texas. And
worst place in the whole world.
Well, you know, here's the thing is like, you know, we're talking on the podcast. So let's talk on the podcast. So I am biracial. My mom is white. My dad is black. Okay. The most generic thing in the world now. But when I was born in Texas, they had what was called anti-miscegenation laws. So anti-miscegenation was anti-race mixing laws that you couldn't marry and mix race. I was born less than 15 years after those laws were repealed. And we all know, like, just because you repeal a law less like a decade ago doesn't mean people's minds have changed.
You can't legislate morality.
You can't legislate morality. So I was born on the Fort Knox Army base. My parents are military, retired Vietnam era vets. And we had family land, and we moved into Texas. And so it was brutal. It was really brutal. We're talking like clan level activity. And I took a lot of really painful slights as a young child, just kindergarten through 12th grade. It was hard. And I disassociated because if I sat there and really paid attention to how people were looking at me and treating me, I don't think I could have, there was no way I could be functional. So the easiest way is to just kind of come out of your body and ignore the things around you and sort of go into your own safe space. And my safe space was UIL, performing and reading and being in my own kind of like little fantasy world of Lord of the Rings books. And, you know, I love the fantasy novels because, you know, I just always imagine like one day a wizard is going to show up.
He was going to say, I need you to share.
I need you, Phedra. You know, we got to go to Mordor, sis. Like, get your cloak and let's go, girl. And so, yeah, I always had these escapist fantasies of something was going to come and it was going to be miraculous and amazing. And I was going to go on this journey that was going to lead me away from where I was. And I think a lot of people, whether it's at home or it's at school or it's through other places that they go, they sort of get bullied out of their own body. There's probably not a lot of people who haven't been bullied out of their own body. And they don't, a lot of them, they're not even aware of how far out of their own body that they've been pushed, you know? And then when you ask them to be like, hey, when I look at you in your eyes, I can tell that you are uncomfortable. Why? Oh, well, my nose, I don't like, can you not shoot my tummy, you know, or, you know, the guys are like trying to make sure they're extra flexy, you know, and it's like, you know, people are really self-conscious about themselves. And so for me, photography isn't just taking a picture, it's like a form of therapy, you know, and actually as I grow in it, I'm more interested in the therapeutic aspect of it than even just the pictures.
So, you know, you said that you yourself kind of disassociated. So when do you think that healing sort of came, or is it still something you feel like you're working on?
It's ongoing. And it's like, even though I've always, I thought, been a self-aware person, because, you know, the one safe space I always had was my intellect. Maybe you can empathize with that. So if you're not the most physically desired person, you're not the popular kid, you know, and nobody's picking you to be on their A teams, you know, and the kickball, then where do you go? Like, you have your mind. I was obviously smart. Nobody could tell me I was stupid. It was so clearly obvious that I was gifted and talented. So, if that's the only safe space you have to huddle and hide, then you start really digging into your mind, your intellect. So I always intellectualized thinking and reading and understanding, but healing is physical. Mm-hmm. Healing is like the physical pushes, the physical shoves, the physical things people have said to you, the rejection. And there's nothing you can intellectualize your way out of. You actually just have to sit with that grief. And that's been a really recent process of me, of going back and letting myself feel those things instead of just trying to outthink them.
Yeah. So when you went into the photography, were you thinking about this at all? Or
if you go onto my Instagram wall or whatever it's called, and you scroll to the very first picture I posted, it's of an older African American lady, and I was at an event, and there was tons of people there. But I turned and I saw this woman, and she was just shining. And I had just gotten like a new, like real professional fancy camera that I could barely use. I could barely use this camera. But I knew enough to like just to go up and be like, hey, can I take your picture? Like, you just look really radiant. And she was like, sure. And I snap this picture of her, and if you look at it, you can just see there's something special about this lady. And it didn't take a lot of editing because I didn't know a lot of editing. It didn't take a lot of skill because I didn't have a lot of skill. But she was just so clearly shining that she carried the day. And so I knew at that point, I was like, I can see things through my camera. Things that maybe I can see with my physical eyes, I can like capture them with my camera. And I knew then that I was like, I'm looking for light. And if you know anything about photography is all about light.
Yeah.
It's about the qualities of light.
The name is based off the Greek word for light.
Exactly, So the funny thing to me is when I got a little bit more into like the metaphysical cross-referencing with photography, I was like, everything about apertures and stuff like that. That's like the human eye, your eye and stuff like that. And, if you get in, and then you get into the biblical thing, it's like, if your eye be single, your body is filled with light. And I was like, well, that's kind of like a camera lens, seeing through that single eye and looking for that light in people and using and manipulating that light to create images. And for me, it's like a healing metaphysical process.
Yeah. No, that's what's interesting about photography is it's a very interesting way to almost show a narrative, just there's photos. It's something we take in an instant.
Right.
But and yet, like it can be like one of the most powerful narrative devices.
Absolutely.
More like the whole picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah,
but
sure.
like we see these. I think it was Time had a series, and it's like 100 greatest photos of all time. And when you look at those things, the amount that they told more than any stories that were being written. Or even videos or something like that at the time. It's this super condensed way that
telling a whole story.
We can all understand.
Yeah.
There's something primal. Yeah, something oddly human about just this technology that we came up with,
It's incredible, like
300 years ago.
Yeah, we're like camera obscuras and pinhole cameras and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a language without words,
Mm-hmm.
You can just look at it and you can feel the emotion of that moment.
Yeah. So, I guess where do you want to go with your photography? What do you want to do with it?
That's a really good question. As I explore more and I do more, I'm like, what do I really want this to be? I don't hate or judge any photographer. Like, we all have our thing. You know, some people want to be family photographers and newborn photographers and fashion photographers. And again, like, none of those things, like, I will do them. You know, if I have the opportunity and I need some money and someone's interested and likes my style, then absolutely. But for me now, I'm realizing it's like more and more it is therapeutic application of photography for me. So you asked me, like, what kind of photography I lean into. I think there are plenty of photographers taking pictures of attractive and pretty young ladies. You know, if you want to see pictures of
I really can't think of anyone who's doing that right
yeah,
now.
you know, it's like if you want to see pictures of attractive, pretty young ladies, like, Instagram is your jam, you know. There's plenty of people who can do that. I usually like working with men because, one, I think men right now need a lot of healing. Like, we're going through this whole gender war thing, and it's really easy to be like, you suck, no, you suck, no, you suck, no, you suck. I think that we talked about the disassociation of the body. And I think if you look at our culture now with, like, the school shootings and everything that's going on, and, you know, the school to prison pipeline, that generally impacts men.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of times I think men just go out and someone like gives them a wholehearted, genuine compliment, like, hey, bro, that shirt is really bringing out the color of your eyes.
Well, thank you.
And it is, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think men get a whole lot of wholehearted compliments. And I don't think a lot of times, like, a good, conscientious man, if he wants to be safe with the whole Me Too and feminism, let's be real, he has to be really careful about the application of his own physical presence and his own sexuality. So a lot of really decent dudes, they like, or who are married or in long-term commitments, they kind of like dry up some of their like masculine energy in order to be safe. Like,
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
No, I do. And like you said, like, you know, conscientious, good guys, like it.
You don't want to be sleazy.
Yeah.
You don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. You know, you don't want your wife or girlfriend to be, you know, concerned, you know, so you dry up some of your masculinity and your tendencies, and it kind of like it goes deeper into you to be safe, you know, and you don't want any air of anything unwholesome around you. You're a good dude, you know.
Yeah.
So when I get some of these good dudes in front of a camera and I'm like, hey man, I like see you, nothing weird, but like I see you and you're like a really good looking dude. Like, have you ever had anybody like take cool pictures of you? And they're like, no. You know, or someone will reach out to me and they're just wanting like an album cover and they just want to do like the generic like cigar peace sign, you know. It's like,
Yeah.
let's take this a little bit further. And you know, I get these guys in front of the camera and it's like they're kind of like, I'm like, we don't want Sunday Easter poses. I want you to actually feel yourself and your body. I want you to express your masculinity. I want you to really like learn how like your face looks, and let's lose some shadowing and like let's really pose you. And at first they're like so uncomfortable, and then I'm like, no, this is a safe space for you. Like, man, let's get like real. Let's I need you to feel this in like flowing through your body. And then like they get more and more and more comfortable, and then by the time they see those photos of themselves, they're like, holy shit, who is this guy?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's you, man. That's you.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think too, there is a fear of seeing yourself, you know, especially like you said, when I take photos for thumbnails and stuff, definitely women usually are more comfortable with it at first. It's harder. I mean, even me as a guy going to another guy and be like, hey, can I take a photo of you? You know, it's a little awkward, but
Well, I think
something I noticed though is like I will get a photo and I'll really like the photo because I'm like, that's that person. And I think it's because of like social media and all that, as cliche as it is to say, but we do put out this like very catered version of who we are and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad to me because I'll like post these thumbnails or something, and somebody will be like, "Oh, I look like I hate that photo," or something. I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't, because that's you." That's the person I just met, and
it's hard. It's hard, because I try not to just like airbrush everything off of somebody, every wrinkle, every line, it's like I want it to be organic in you, because that's like the reason I reached out to them in the first place and was like, hey, can I take your picture? Because there was something about them that I met, and they were shining in some kind of way and trying to capture that. And like you said, I think some people have been so bullied and so shamed out of their own sense of self that it's like, it hurts. Mm-hmm. Like I've taken pictures of myself, and it's like I'm getting older and stuff like that, and you're like, oh, my neck, and oh, my jaw, and oh, my tummy, and it's like it can hurt sometimes seeing a picture of yourself. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, everything is so curated, everything is airbrushed, and everything is flawless, and everything is tanned, and everything is perfect. Then when you fall short of that, you feel like something's wrong. And through my photography, I really try to talk people through it. It's like almost like a therapy session of like, stand up, what would it feel like if you were up really straight and upright? What would it feel like if you got a little, if you got a little oomph in you, like what would that feel like? And then people actually do that journey of feeling how it feels to do that, you can see them change. You can see them change. And and they're almost, sometimes they get a photo back from me and they're like
no, it's for sure. So I think I've really ran out of good intelligent questions to go with from here. So I'd kind of like to turn it over to you and let you talk about whatever you want, plug whatever you want.
I really don't. I mean, I guess I would say, it's like if you want to take some photos, that are just beyond, I think, just being cute and sexy. Mm-hmm. Of course we want you to look nice. We want you to look cute and sexy. But I really encourage people who maybe they're trying to heal. They're doing maybe their traditional therapy, and they're talking through their problems, and maybe they're not feeling that headway. I think an hour photo session can really go a long way of just seeing yourself in it. Maybe you're uncomfortable. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the perfect model shape. You can be any type of person. I can see and find something beautiful in you that maybe you haven't even seen in yourself. So like reach out to me, it's like, let's talk about like what that would feel like for you to just really be vulnerable, for about an hour. And I always ask people when I start my photo session, it's like, what is the thing that you like most about yourself? What do you think is the most beautiful thing about you? And they're like, they like take a second to answer that. But if I ask them, well, what is the thing that you really don't want me to, where are you kind of like ashamed, or what you don't want in the picture? Oh no, they can tell me that. They're like, oh, my arms, or oh, my nose. But when you ask them like, what do you think is your most beautiful feature? They're like, I want to change that around. I want it to be easier for you to be like, you know what? I really like this, and I really like this, and my hair is shiny, and my hands are beautiful, and it's like and it's like, I would want everybody to never feel uncomfortable seeing a picture of themselves.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me. Like, I never know where these conversations are going to go. Yeah. So this one went so much deeper than I ever could imagine, and I thought it was fantastic.
I really appreciate you reaching out to me. I'm a newbie in it. I don't know where this is going to go. It may just, it's kind of like a hobby that I earn money from,
Yeah.
and it's something that I enjoy. I love the meeting people aspect of it. I love the adventure, going on these little adventures.
Yeah.
Let's go behind this abandoned building, It's like, I love that. For me, it's just a way to make friends and meet new people and show people how beautiful they are.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the magic.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate the opportunity to go on an adventure with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming along. Went 2 whole blocks.
Hey man, an adventure is an adventure. I'll take it.
So
You're not a wizard, are you?
I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
Onward 808, right?
That's me, yeah.
That's your Instagram. Go and follow her on there. She's got some great photos.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for sitting down with me.
I appreciate you.
Awesome. Kind of like that video you just watched, huh? Go ahead and like and subscribe and share it if you liked it. If you didn't like it, it's a free country at the end of the day. So. Oh, you did? Oh, thanks. Yeah.